Welcome to Above Par. I'm your host, Kathy Hartwood. I show you how to take more of your talent to the golf course without practicing harder, taking more lessons, or buying new equipment. I show you how to end the frustration of underperforming so you can start playing to your potential. This is where you are going to learn how to think above par so you can play below par. Let's get to it. Hello, my golf friend. Welcome back to Think Above Par. Glad you're here and listening. Hope you're having a beautiful day. So today I'm going to jump right in. I want to talk about golf emotions, and I want to talk about excitement and being excited to play. It's a topic that comes up a lot of times that people I ask my clients, how you feeling about the upcoming tournament? What are you thinking? What are you believing about yourself? I get an answer. I'm excited to play. I'm excited for the tournament. I'm excited to go out there and play. And I want them to get curious. What does that mean? What does excitement feel like? And what does that do for you going into the tournament? And I'm not saying that we're not excited about going out and playing in competitions or having rounds of golf, and we can really look forward to them. But excitement and excited is an emotion. And it actually feels a lot like anxiety. We get moving a little bit faster. We might, our hands might shake a little bit. Our heart might palpitate, just like first tee jitters. And so excitement isn't always a useful emotion for golf. We can think it's a positive emotion, but it's not always a useful or beneficial emotion, which is what I want to start reframing things a little bit on, talking about how things are either they benefit me, useful, or they don't benefit me. Not so much in the context of something being positive or negative, because when we say an emotion is either positive, that means in our head, we process it as that it's good. And if we have a negative emotion, we process it as being bad, or we think about it as being bad. And then we go through life in golf thinking that we're supposed to avoid negative emotions. And I think this creates a little bit of a disconnect for a lot of people in golf, is that I shouldn't have a negative emotion because a negative emotion is not good. It's bad. Right? And emotions are neither good nor bad. They just are. They're either beneficial or they're not beneficial to you, your actions, your results, how you show up in the world, how you show up in the golf course. And while I'm starting this conversation talking about excitement, it's not really what I want to talk about in this whole context of this episode, but I do want to talk about emotions. And the spectrum of emotions that we have on the golf course is really much smaller than the spectrum of emotions that we can experience in life. And this is kind of good news. And it's good news from the standpoint that if we have a smaller bucket of emotions that we're actually dealing with on the golf course, then we can create a lot of tools to help us with those emotions. We get to know ourselves a little bit and say, these are the emotions that I have a tendency to experience on the golf course the most. So let me give you an example. I talk about the emotional spectrum, that as humans, we have the ability to experience any emotion. We are born with that ability. We might, through life and life experiences, start judging these emotions and just deciding that as a human, I'm not going to experience this emotion. I'm going to wipe it off of the dry erase board that I have back here. I'm going to wipe it off, and I'm not going to experience it. I don't want to feel grief. I don't want to feel terror. I don't want to feel vulnerability, right? I don't want to feel shame, right? And so you might decide, I don't want to feel those emotions, so I'm not going to put myself out into the world that I have an opportunity to experience them. So we shut ourselves down. Maybe we don't sign up for events, or we don't engage with people, or we don't put ourselves out there because we're trying really hard to avoid what we deem as being negative emotions, that these things that we experience could possibly create this emotion that I don't think I have the capacity or the capability to process and to experience. So I'm just going to avoid it. I play life small. I go out and I'm like, I'm not going to put myself out there so that this is a possibility for me because it's bad. This emotion is bad. You get to experience them all. Really, it takes 90 seconds for you to process an emotion. We hang on to some a little bit longer because of the thoughts that we have about it, what we make it mean, and the story we tell. Shame is a great example of that, is that we can say to ourselves, we're not good enough. And then we're also like, yeah, and I stink at this and I suck at that. And no one's going to like me and I'm never going to get good at this game. We just bury ourselves with all this other dialogue, and it starts to feel really crappy. And we're like, wow, I really, really don't like shame. And yeah, I don't blame you. I think shame is a heavy emotion. So that was a lot of life stuff. Let me bring it back to golf. Golf, our spectrum of emotions that we're going to experience is much smaller. We're not going to have the full range of a life experience. When we go to the golf course, chances are we're not going to experience too much grief or terror when we're out on the golf course. Hopefully. They're usually going to be in a certain bucket of emotions, a certain range of emotions. Excitement can be one of those, but because it's emotion that moves a little bit faster, it's not super useful or beneficial for a golf game, because the goal when you're playing golf is to hit as many shots from calm, certain, and confident, is to get back to that. We sign up to play golf. We sign up for the possibility that we're going to have these ranges of emotions all on one hole. But really, when I go through and I talk to people about this, they're pretty similar, the emotions that most people experience on the golf course. So before a shot, you might experience some nerves or anxiety, fear, pressure, stress, doubt. After a shot, after you hit a shot, and let's say it doesn't go your way, you might have some disappointment, shame, anger or frustration, potentially embarrassment. Right? For the most part, there's like 4 emotions you could possibly have before you play and hit a shot. There's 4 emotions that you could possibly have after you hit a shot. I'm not saying that there's other ones that don't come into play, like hope or motivation or determination, but for the most part, these are our standard emotions that are not beneficial. And then at the end of 18, after a round, you have the possibility of being proud, fulfilled, satisfied. Those are positive emotions, useful emotions that we're all striving for. We're trying to experience. That's why we put pressure on our golf game, is so that we get to feel those emotions. But we also sign up to have the possibility that we're going to be disappointed, maybe angry, we're going to have shame, and we could have embarrassment, right? Really like 4 negative emotions. And again, I'm not saying that you can't have other ones, but I'm saying for the most part. So this is good news in the standpoint that I don't have to deal with all of life's emotions that come at me, that are going to come at all of us at some point. If we allow ourselves to live a full life, right, we're going to experience them. But on the golf course, I'm just really going to have to deal with just a handful of emotions. My spectrum is much shorter, smaller. So if you can ask yourself, what are the emotions that I'm experiencing on the golf course on a consistent basis? Get curious about what you're thinking that's creating that emotion, knowing that you're the creator of it, not the lie, not the people, not the number that is creating that. It's you and your thoughts about the thing that happened. And how can I manage this emotion, this particular emotion, so that I can get back to being calm, certain, and confident before my next shot, right? So after a shot you hit, and let's say you're disappointed. Disappointment is not a problem. You get to be disappointed. If you play a round of golf and you're never disappointed, you are not living a full golf experience, because golf can be disappointing. It's just one bad bounce. You hit a great shot out of an amazingly hard lie, and you think it's going to land right next to the pin, and it lands 2 inches short in the bunker. I mean, you're going to be disappointed. You hit a great putt and it lips out, you're going to be disappointed. This is not a problem. The problem lies is if you take a swing from disappointment on that next shot, you are going to affect your results, and they're not going to be very good, most likely. Golf is weird. We can still be disappointed and angry and be nervous and still create a great result. It's just not a predictable result. It's not the state that we want to be in on a consistent basis. It's not our preferred place to be, right? So my point in this podcast is I want you to take a look at what emotions do you typically experience on the golf course. And when I talk to people, when people come and work with me, one of the first things that I have them do is fill out a form is tell me your top 3 emotions. What are your top 3 emotions that you experience on the golf course? And when I say top, I'm like not saying your worst, I'm saying your most common, because it's very revealing about what's going on in your head, like what you're thinking on a consistent basis, or maybe what you're making golf mean about yourself, or how much pressure you're putting on yourself, or what you're making golf mean relative to other people and what they're thinking about you. Right. And then if you start knocking those out and having a plan one by one, because we're not experiencing and having the work of like life and all the possible emotions we can have, we really only have to deal with 8 to 10 emotions, let me start getting ahead of these. Let me start processing these emotions faster. So I'm affecting myself less on the golf course by being in a not beneficial emotion, right? That's not going to serve me, so that my experience is better. I get to enjoy the game more, and then my results are going to be better. And I get to step into feeling more beneficial emotions when I finish the round of being fulfilled and satisfied and having pride in what I did out there, more often than being disappointed or shaming myself or being angry or frustrated. And if you play enough golf, you are going to be disappointed and have shame and be down on yourself at times about your results. If you can start tackling your major emotions and knocking them off, your personal ones, right, then you're so much more empowered and tooled. Is that a thing? Have more tools on the golf course to manage your mind and ultimately have more control over your results, more predictability in your experience. And going back to where I started, excitement in there. Like if you had a hole in one is so fun. I can't tell you how many people I've coached or who have reached out to me. Like, I had a hole in one and then a double bogey on the next hole. I said, how did you make a double bogey? I hit it out of bounds because I was so excited. I was swinging faster. I wasn't thinking clearly, right? And that's a challenging moment. Maybe you hold out or something, and that excitement on the next shot doesn't serve you. It's not beneficial because it's an energy and an emotion that we move faster in. And you get to move out of that emotion back to being calm, certain, and confident. But a lot of times what happens is people are like, well, I don't get to be very excited on the golf course very often. Why do I want to move out of that? You just want to move out of it for that next shot. You get to be excited in between shots. At the end of the round, you get to buy everybody drinks in the bar and be super excited. You might just be postponing that satisfaction and that excitement for the benefit of your own golf game. So looking at the emotions that serve you on the golf course, they're not always going to be in that quote unquote negative spectrum. They're sometimes in the positive spectrum of things that you experience that don't serve you. But I want you to look at the ones that you have the most often and start coming up with tools or different ways that you can pivot away from them. What do you need to think? What can you think about this situation so that you can move through that frustration, that disappointment, that fear, that anxiety faster? All right, my friends, I hope that was helpful. Make sure you get on my email list so that you can know about all the programs that I have coming up this year at kathyhartwood.com/join, and have a beautiful week. I will talk to you next Wednesday. Bye.